The Watcher in the Shadows Galactic Council Hall was a place of light and sound. Every wall shone with banners of hundreds of worlds, each one glowing with its own colors. Delegates from across the galaxy moved between polished tables, exchanging words in dozens of alien languages, but while the hall buzzed with activity, one figure remained still. In the farthest corner, where shadows clung to the walls, sat Thor. Not the Thor of human myths, but the alien warrior known to many as the Silent Storm. His armor was unlike any other, dark metal that seemed to swallow the light, tall and broad-shouldered. His presence carried the weight of battles fought in places most would never see. He spoke to no one. He only watched. And his gaze was always the same, locked onto the human ambassador across the room. Ambassador Aria Kane stood at the center table, speaking calmly to a group of delegates. Her voice carried the human request for fair trade routes and peace in the outer systems, but even as she spoke, she could feel it, the heavy weight of eyes on her. She glanced around once, twice, and found him there, the alien warrior in the shadows, unmoving, unblinking. At first, she thought it was coincidence. But this was the third day in a row, and each time she had entered the council hall, Thor had been there, watching. Rumors had already begun to spread. Some whispered that Thor was studying humans because he saw them as weak. Others claimed he had fought alongside humans before and was remembering old battles. A few, more dramatic, suggested it was something personal, admiration, or even obsession. But no one dared to ask him, not openly. Thor's reputation was as sharp as the blade strapped to his back, warrior of the 9 clans. Survivor of the Siege of Vornis, the alien who had never once lost in single combat. Aria tried to ignore him at first, but the feeling grew stronger. With each passing hour, it wasn't just the way he looked at her, it was how he looked. Not like a soldier assessing an enemy, not like a leader studying an ally. It was searching, like he was waiting for something to happen. That day's meeting dragged on for hours. Trade disputes, planetary disputes, border disputes, all the same political games. Yet through it all, Thor stayed silent, his dark eyes never leaving her. When the final call for recess came, Aria gathered her documents and prepared to leave. She glanced toward the corner, but Thor was gone. Her heart gave a strange jolt. She scanned the hall quickly. Delegates streamed out. Aides carried stacks of reports. Security drones floated overhead. But the alien warrior was nowhere to be seen. Outside the main chamber, the corridors of the council hall were quieter. The sound of boots on metal floors echoed. She walked toward the private shuttle lifts, her mind already drifting toward her next report. And then she saw him, standing at the far end of the corridor, half hidden in shadow again. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, watching. Aria slowed her steps. Something about the stillness of his figure made the air feel heavier. When she was halfway down the corridor, a group of aides turned the corner between them, blocking her view for a moment. By the time they passed, Thor was gone again. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in her quarters aboard the human embassy ship, staring at the ceiling. Her mind kept returning to those eyes, that stillness. Why would an alien warrior of his rank spend hours just watching her? If it was politics, he could have spoken. If it was intimidation, he could have acted. But instead, nothing. The stars outside her window drifted past slowly, in the silence. She almost convinced herself she was imagining it. Almost, because deep down, she knew the truth. His gaze was not random. It was not meaningless, and whatever reason Thor had for watching her, it was not over. Somewhere in the shadows of the Galactic Council, the alien warrior sat alone. His hands rested on his knees, his head slightly bowed. In front of him, a small holographic image floated, her face, captured from the Council's security feed. He studied it for a long moment before closing the device, and when his eyes opened again, they were not just the eyes of a soldier. They were the eyes of someone carrying a secret too heavy to speak aloud. Asterisk a meeting of worlds next day. The council hall was alive with voices again. Delegates moved like rivers of color, robes and armor reflecting the light from the great dome above. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing trade routes, fleet positions, and images of distant worlds. The smell of alien spices from the diplomatic lounge mixed with the sharp scent of sterilized air. For most, it was another day of politics. For Aria Kane, it was another day of questions. She walked with purpose toward the central table reserved for the human delegation. Her mind was focused on the upcoming vote over border rights in the Vega cluster, but her eyes searched the room before she even realized it. And there he was, Thor, the alien warrior, standing at the edge of the chamber, his dark armor gleaming faintly under the lights. He wasn't in the shadows this time, yet he still stood apart, silent, watching her. The meeting began with the usual formalities. Counselors addressed trade disputes, mining rights, and patrol schedules. Aria listened, made notes, and spoke when required, but every time she glanced to her right, she caught his gaze. It was steady, unwavering, like an anchor in a sea of noise. During a discussion on fleet security, Thor stepped forward. The crowd quieted as he spoke, his voice deep and resonant. The borders you argue over mean little if the darkness beyond them grows unchecked, he said. His words were calm, but they carried a weight that made the air feel heavier. Council members shifted uncomfortably, some nodded, some frowned, but he said no more. He stepped back and resumed his silent post. Aria tried to focus, yet her mind kept replaying his words. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Like someone who knew more than he was allowed to tell. When the session paused for a mid-meal recess, the delegates dispersed into smaller groups. Aria moved toward the refreshment tables. She poured herself a cup of the warm herbal drink favored by humans here. She felt a presence before she saw him. Thor stood beside her, towering, silent, his shadow stretching across the table. You seem concerned, she said cautiously, looking up at him. His eyes did not leave hers. You are the only human here worth watching, he replied. It was not a compliment. It was a statement. Her fingers tightened around her cup. And why is that? She asked. His jaw shifted, as if he wanted to speak, but stopped himself. Finally, he said only, because soon, the eyes will turn to you, and you will not be ready. Before she could ask what he meant, someone called his name from across the hall. He turned, walked away, and was swallowed by the crowd. The rest of the session passed in a haze. Her mind was locked on those words. She had been in politics long enough to know a warning when she heard one. But what did he mean by, the eyes will turn to you? Who was watching? And why would she not be ready? That evening, she left the council hall under escort. The security drones hummed softly overhead as they led her to the shuttle docks. But as she stepped into her private shuttle, she saw movement in the shadows near the loading bay. A tall figure, armored, unmoving, Thor. He didn't follow her, didn't speak, just stood there, watching until the shuttle door closed. The hum of the shuttle engines filled the silence. The stars outside seemed colder tonight. She leaned back in her seat, replaying the day in her mind, the gaze, the warning, the silence. Something was coming. She didn't know what, but Thor did, and whatever it was already moving closer. Clues in the dark Galactic Council hall was quiet at night. The ground banners that hung from the high walls swayed gently in the recycled air. The hum of the main generators echoed faintly through the vast, empty corridors. Most delegates had returned to their quarters or left the station entirely, but Aria Kane was still here. She sat in her office on the upper level of the human embassy wing. Working through the endless reports from the day's meetings, her eyes were heavy. Her mind tired, she almost decided to stop for the night. Then a movement on her desk console caught her attention. One of the station's passive security feeds had triggered an alert. It was a low-priority notice. Movement detected in a restricted corridor near the council archives. Curious, she tapped the feed open. The grainy image flickered to life at first. She saw nothing but dim blue light reflecting off the polished metal walls. Then a tall shadow moved into view. Even with the poor resolution, she knew instantly who it was. Thor, the alien warrior, moved with the silent grace of a predator. But he was not alone. A second figure emerged from the darkness. This one wore a long, hooded cloak that concealed everything. Height, build, even the shape of the face. The two stood close, speaking in low tones the feed's audio could not pick up. Thor reached into his armor and pulled out a small object. It glowed, faintly blue, casting light across both their faces for a brief moment. Aria froze. It was a crystal, not the decorative kind often traded between worlds. This was something older, something powerful. The cloaked figure took it carefully. Thor glanced over his shoulder, scanning the corridor. Then the two exchanged a few more words before disappearing into a side door. The feed cut off. Aria leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. What had she just seen? A secret meeting after hours in a restricted area with an unknown figure. And Thor, the same alien warrior who had been watching her for days, handing over a mysterious glowing crystal. The simplest answer was espionage, but Thor was not some petty spy. His reputation across the galaxy was one of honor and strength. Why would someone like him be involved in shadow dealings unless it was something more? She copied the footage to a secure drive and locked it away. If she was going to confront him, she needed to choose the right time and place. But a cold thought slid into her mind. What if he already knew she had seen him? The station's artificial night cycle continued. Delegates slept, traders closed their stalls, and patrol drones floated silently through the docking bays. Yet Aria could not rest. She left her office and walked the quiet halls of the embassy wing. Every shadow seemed deeper tonight. Every sound seemed louder. Turning a corner, she stopped suddenly, far down the corridor. Near the junction to the council chambers, she saw him, Thor. He was standing alone, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed straight ahead. For a moment, she thought he hadn't noticed her. Then his head turned. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, a silent acknowledgement, and then he was gone, stepping into the shadows as if he had never been there. Back in her quarters, she stared out at the distant stars. Her reflection in the glass looked tense, unfamiliar. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than her, bigger than politics. Thor was in the middle of it, and now, so was she. Asterisk the confrontation next morning. The council hall was already alive with motion when Aria arrived. Delegates spoke in clusters, their voices overlapping into a constant low murmur. Holographic charts hovered in the air, and aides hurried between tables with stacks of documents. But Aria was not here to talk trade or diplomacy today. She was here for answers. Thor stood at his usual post near the outer wall, his armor dark against the bright banners above him. He didn't move when she entered, but she could feel his gaze settle on her immediately. This time, she didn't avoid it. She walked straight toward him, her steps steady, her chin high. "Why have you been watching me?" she asked without preamble. The surrounding noise seemed to fade. Thor didn't answer right away, his expression unreadable. "Because you are not safe," he said finally, his voice low. It was not a threat. It was a warning. Aria crossed her arms. Not safe from what? She pressed. His eyes narrowed slightly. "If I tell you, you will not believe me," he replied. "Try me." she said, her voice sharper than she intended. Thor glanced toward the crowded chamber, scanning the faces of nearby delegates. Then, he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. They have already chosen you. Aria's heartbeat quickened. Who? She asked. The ones who move unseen, he said, the shadow that waits between the stars. She frowned. It sounded like the kind of vague threat spies used to keep people paranoid. But there was something in his tone, a weight, an urgency, that made her hesitate. And the crystal? She asked, her eyes locked on his. For the first time, she saw a flicker of surprise cross his face. You saw, he said, more statement than question. I saw you hand it to someone last night. She replied. His jaw tightened. That was not a gift, he said. It was bait. The words sent a chill through her. Bait for what? She asked. For them, he answered. To see who would take it, to confirm the traitor in the council. She took a step back, trying to process his words. If you're telling the truth, why not bring this to the council leaders? She asked. Thor shook his head. They are not all what they seem. Many wear faces that are not their own. Her mind spun. It was a dangerous claim, one that could shatter the fragile alliances in the council. And if it was true, it meant there was an enemy hiding in plain sight. But she still didn't know why she was part of it. What does this have to do with me? She asked, his gaze locked on hers, steady and unblinking. Because you are the key they need, he said simply. The key to what? She demanded. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped back, blending into the crowd as the council's meeting bell rang. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Aria spoke in debates, nodded at allies, signed agreements, but every time she glanced toward the edge of the room, Thor was there, watching. The warning echoed in her mind. They have already chosen you. That night, she didn't go straight to her quarters. Instead, she took the long route through the station's observation deck. From here, she could see the glow of the nearby planet and the endless stretch of stars beyond it. The vastness made her feel small, yet it also reminded her of how far humans had come. She was still staring when she sensed movement behind her. She didn't turn. I know you're there, she said. Thor stepped into view beside her, silent. As ever, you still don't believe me, he said. I'm trying, she replied. But you speak in riddles and shadows. If you want me to trust you, you need to tell me the whole truth. He looked out at the stars, his voice quieter than before. The truth is not safe to speak here, he said. And if I told you everything, now, you would not sleep again. His words sent another shiver through her. She realized then that whatever he was hiding, it was bigger than politics, bigger than personal suspicion, and the way he said it made her believe he was right. The hidden enemy council hall had settled into its usual rhythm. Delegates debated. Aides delivered messages. Translators whispered into earpieces for a brief moment. It almost felt like a normal day. Then the alarms began, a deep, echoing siren rolled through the station. The lights shifted from bright white to flashing red. Security drones zipped overhead, their weapons active. The council speaker's voice broke over the comms, ordering all delegates to shelter in secure chambers. But before the order could finish, the first explosion rocked the hall. The glass panels above shattered, raining fragments onto the tables. Through the broken dome, shadows moved, sleek black ships gliding close to the station. They weren't firing from a distance. They were docking, boarding claws locked into the hull, tearing their way in. Aria's guards moved quickly, pulling her toward the secure exits. But before they could reach the doors, a section of the wall exploded inward. Smoke and heat rolled through the room. Silhouettes emerged from the haze, tall, armored figures, their helmets smooth and featureless. They moved with perfect coordination, cutting down anyone who resisted. One of the attackers raised a weapon toward her. But before the shot could be fired, A blur of motion slammed into him. Thor. His blade cut through the attacker's armor, like paper, sending the enemy crumpling to the floor. Without a word, he grabbed Aria's arm, pulling her behind cover. "You're coming with me," he said, his voice like steel. She tried to speak, but the noise of the fight drowned her words. All around them, security forces clashed with the invaders. The council chamber was becoming a battlefield. Thor moved with terrifying efficiency. Every strike from his blade found a target. Every block and dodge seemed perfectly timed. He wasn't just fighting to survive. He was clearing a path. And that path was leading them away from the secure chamber. "Shouldn't we be going to the safe rooms?" she shouted. "They're already compromised," he replied without looking back. "You'd be walking into their hands." They reached a side corridor, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. Aria's breath came in sharp bursts. She wasn't used to running through combat zones. Thor, on the other hand, moved like the chaos only made him faster. As they turned a corner, 2 more armored attackers appeared. Thor didn't slow. One fell to a thrust of his blade, the other to a precise strike that shattered his helmet visor. The bodies hit the floor without a sound. Finally, they ducked into a dim maintenance passage. The air was thick with the smell of metal and ozone. Only now did Thor stop, listening carefully. "They weren't here for the council," he said quietly. "They were here for you." Her heart pounded. "What do you mean?" she asked, their eyes locked on hers. "They've been tracking you for weeks. The crystal I gave away, it was bait to draw them out, to confirm who was leading them inside the council walls." She shook her head in disbelief. "But why me?" "Because you can open something they want," he said. She froze. "What?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he checked the passage behind them before leaning closer. "There is a vault," he said, "older than the station, older than the council itself. It was sealed long before most of the galaxy's empires existed. Only a human can open it. And now they know you are the one who can." Her thoughts spun. A vault. Older than the council. "What's inside?" she asked. Their voice was grim. Something that could end wars, or end everything, before she could reply. Another explosion shook the station, this one closer. Dust and sparks rained from the ceiling. Thor grabbed her hand. "This is not the place for more questions," he said. "We have to move before they close in." They pushed deeper into the maintenance tunnels, the sounds of battle growing fainter. But the danger was not gone. In her mind, Aria knew one thing. The mystery of Thor's gaze had changed. He wasn't watching her because of politics or curiosity. He was watching her because somewhere out there, in the darkness between the stars, an enemy wanted her above all else. And they would not stop until they had her. Asters, the truth revealed, the maintenance tunnels were narrow and dim. Pipes lined the walls, hissing faintly as steam escaped in thin streams. Thor moved ahead of Aria, every step silent despite the weight of his armor. He stopped often, listening for any sound of pursuit. When he was certain they were alone, he finally slowed his pace. Aria's breathing was uneven. Not from fear alone, but from the storm of questions in her mind. She caught up to him, her voice low but sharp. "You said there's a vault, something only a human can open. Why me?" Thor's gaze met hers, steady and intense. "You carry a pattern," he said. "Not in your mind, not in your blood. It's in your very existence, a sequence older than your world. The vault responds only to that sequence." She frowned. "That makes no sense. I'm just a diplomat. I have no special code inside me. You don't need to understand it for it to be true," he replied. "Your people were not the first humans in this galaxy, long before Earth knew the stars. Another branch of your kind walked them. They built the vault, sealed it, and left a key in the form of a living successor." Her skin prickled. "Are you saying I'm descended from some ancient starfarers?" "Yes, he said without hesitation. And the shadow between the stars has been looking for that key for a very long time. Aria tried to focus on the facts. What's in the vault? She asked. There's jaw tightened, a weapon, or what some call a weapon. It has the power to burn worlds to ash in moments. It can also heal, rebuild, and restore entire planets, but in the wrong hands, it will end civilizations in days. The weight of his words pressed down on her. And these attackers tonight, they were sent to take me so I could open it for them. He nodded. Yes, but they will not stop with one attempt. Now that they have shown themselves, they will keep coming until they succeed or are destroyed. Her mind was racing. So the crystal you gave away was a lure. Thor finished. It carried a false signal, one that would draw their agents to retrieve it. I needed to confirm the traitor inside the council, and I did. She took a step back. Then tell the council who it is, she said. Thor shook his head slowly. The traitor is shielded by more than politics. If I accuse them without proof, I will be removed. If you accuse them, you will be silenced before the words leave your mouth. The truth of that stung. She had seen how fragile alliances could be here. One wrong move and a reputation could be destroyed forever. She looked at him, frustration and fear mixing in her chest. So what now? We move first, Thor said. The vault is hidden on a dead moon in the outer rim. I know where it is, but we can't go directly. We'll need to lose their hunters, gather supplies, and find allies we can trust. Then we open it before they do. Her voice was hesitant. And if we open it, what do we do with what's inside? Thor didn't look away. That choice will be yours, he said. It was always meant to be made by the key. The air in the tunnel seemed colder. She realized then that everything in her life had shifted in the space of one day. She was no longer just a representative for Earth in a sea of alien politics. She was now the center of a game that had been in motion for centuries, and the enemy was not going to stop. Footsteps echoed faintly from somewhere behind them. There's head. Snapped toward the sound. They've found our trail, he said. He drew his blade, the metal catching the dim light. Stay close to me. We're not finished talking, but we need to survive first. They began to move again, faster this time. The hum of the station's engines vibrated through the floor under their boots. Aria felt the crystal weight of his words pressing harder with each step. Somewhere far out there, an ancient vault waited for her, and between her and that vault stood enemies she could barely imagine. A silent promise. Echoes of footsteps behind them grew louder. Shadows flickered on the curved walls of the maintenance tunnel. Thor kept moving at a steady pace, his blade ready, his eyes scanning every corner. Aria stayed close, her breath quick and shallow. She could feel the hum of the station's systems through the floor. Every vibration seemed to carry the tension of the hunt. They reached a service hatch at the end of the tunnel. Thor pulled a small device from his belt and pressed it against the lock. The hatch opened with a low hiss, revealing a narrow drop, shaft lit by dim red lights. Down, he said simply. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, but the sound of armored boots in the distance made her move. Thor followed right after, sealing the hatch behind them. The drop shaft ended in a small cargo bay on the far side of the station. It was quiet here, far from the chaos in the council hall. A single transport shuttle sat on the pad, its engines in standby. Thor motioned for her to board while he checked the corners for hidden threats. As she stepped inside, she turned to face him. You've been watching me for days. You've fought for me, and you've told me pieces of a story that makes me question everything. Why? Thor paused at the foot of the shuttle ramp. Because you are the key, he said, and because I made a promise. She frowned. A promise to who? His eyes met hers, and for a moment, she thought she saw something deeper behind his calm exterior. A long time ago, before your world knew my name, I swore to protect the one who would carry this sequence. I never thought it would be you. But here we are. The shuttle's engines hummed louder as he moved to the pilot's seat. Through the small forward window, the stars of deep space shone beyond the docking bay doors. Aria strapped into the co-pilot seat, still trying to piece everything together. You're taking me to this vault? She asked. Eventually, Thor said, but first, we need to vanish from their sight. They will be searching every trade lane and border gate for you. We'll use routes they've forgotten, places they won't think to look. The shuttle lifted smoothly. The docking bay doors slid open, revealing the endless black of space. As they crossed the threshold, the station fell away behind them. It looked peaceful from a distance, hiding the truth of the chaos inside. Aria turned to him again. You said what's in the vault could end wars or end everything. How do we make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands? Thor's hands tightened slightly on the controls. We make sure we open it first, and when we do, you decide. Her chest tightened at the thought. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a leader of armies. Why would I be the one to make that choice? Because the builders of the vault believed it should be a choice made by someone who carries both the power to destroy and the heart to protect. That's why it must be human. That's why it must be you. For a long moment, there was only the soft hum of the shuttle. The stars ahead stretched into thin lines as the ship entered faster than light travel. Aria looked forward, her fear still there, but tempered by a growing resolve. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it, because now she understood running was no longer an option. Thor glanced at her once, then back to the stars. You will have questions, he said. I will answer them when it is safe. She nodded slowly, and then, without looking at her, he added, I will not let them take you. No matter the cost. It was not a loud promise. It was not spoken for anyone else to hear. But the weight in his voice made it clear that it was more than just words. It was a vow, forged in battles past and sealed by the silent bond between them. Somewhere far beyond their flight path, in the cold darkness between the stars, a faint pulse of light shimmered into existence. It was not a star. It was a signal. And those who had sent the hunters would see it. The chase was not over. It had only just begun.